I see a dawn.
Uh-huh. Is my thing muted?
Nope, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I was pressed the mute button and then I pressed it again and then I couldn't tell if it was muted or not.
How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty in the morning is early, but
Oh, well, you know, we
Oh,
could have
no, it's
postponed this
okay.
or whatever.
No, this was like I want to talk about this. It's a fun
Okay.
movie.
I saw your hubby. I went pokey walking.
You did?
Yes, I actually went out on ye old raid.
Good for you.
I actually used some coinage that I had won from various gym thingies, and yeah,
Good
I was,
for you.
and I actually got two of the four things that we were of the beasties. So that was something, I guess.
Of the
So
wee beasties, huh?
yeah, the big wee beasties or whatever they were.
So I have some of my coworkers, some of my staff, one particular staff, she's such a sweetie. We try to trade something every day.
Oh, sure.
So, and every so often we get lucky. And today I got myself for the first time a lucky ditto.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get to trading with you fine folk, though I have nothing you want.
But that's not the point
Yeah,
because it's not so much not having something that
right.
you always want something that you don't have something lucky of.
Hmm.
So I promise you, Sheldon has enough lucky rats and lucky spiders. And I am notorious for giving him, I just gave him lucky centrets and bedoofs.
Oh yeah,
So, I mean,
I'm still getting used to all the
yeah,
silly
I mean,
names, all the
there's,
names, and so much.
but I gave him, I was trading him. I'll tell him, we'll see the silliest thing when we're out playing and I'll tell him I'm saving this for you. And then he'll think I'm joking and then I'll trade it to him and he's like, "Oh my god, you weren't kidding me."
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I got a giraffe thingy and a giraffe gear or whatever it's called, and
Yep.
I got two of the big, huge monsters that were in the legendary raids going on today. So no
Cool.
shinies, but still two big ones. So
Yeah, I don't have much luck with the shiniest myself, but
yeah,
it's not like Sheldon has been saying this since he started doing this. He doesn't he does it for the fun, for the interaction with other people, because it gets you out walking. Even if you're sitting and looking at your phone, you're out walking. I mean, you
well,
run into people.
you're even standing. So I mean, you're
Hmm.
even if you're not walking, you're standing up for long periods of time. So that actually burns a little bit, not a lot, but some. Of course, it doesn't help when you get a shaved ice uh, beverage from Tech Lounge, the peanut butter mocha.
No, no, but it's a crying shame that we can't carry around the wine slushies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that would be heavenly. I'd
Yeah,
love to walk around the park with a wine slushie.
yeah. I walked around earlier, and then I went back down to do the raid with Sheldon, and then on my way back, I stopped in Tech Lounge, and I got the shaved ice peanut butter mocha coffee beverage, and
Uh,
it's really good, and probably too many calories, but oh well, it's so
Now, see,
good.
if I was worried about being tired,
Mhm.
I have a Monster Java Monster
Oh,
that I
okay.
could drink.
Sure,
It
sure, sure.
wasn't about the being tired. It was about my poor achy feet from being in the kitchen all day.
Oh, were you in the kitchen all day cooking
Yeah, I was. Which,
bacon?
I enjoy doing it, but
Mhm. Were you baking
I
or
no, it was at work. Our
uh
um One of my staff had an emergency last night,
Oh,
and
I gotcha. So you had to step in and work the
yeah,
kitchen.
that's why I got the 4:30 a.m. text saying we had this tragedy last night. Can you please help? I'm really not in a good place right now, and I'm like,
Sure.
I've been there. I'll do it.
Oh yes, I know those situations too. So
Yeah.
let's see. I got everything all set here, so we can get this rolling.
So what's your I'm
Hmm.
very curious. What's your poll looking like for your next
Oh,
franchise?
I actually have not checked it recently. I was going to check that later. I've been so busy because there's a number of reviews I have to edit yet. I wanted to get this podcast in, and I'm getting the VIP one in. I'm going to be on Daniel's crap movie podcast, The Bottom Shelf, and all of that is leading up to Al, where I'll be going for Weird Al. So there's that. So
Yes.
I've got like a busy
That,
rest of the week. So
uh,
and tomorrow I'm
I
going to
was
be.
just curious.
Oh yeah, and tomorrow
I
I'm
know
going.
what I put my vote in for.
Tomorrow I will be going to uh, at least Child's Play, if not Child's Play and Toy Story 4. So
You're an overachiever, Mark.
I am an overachiever. I want to do it all. Is my problem.
Yeah.
Really want to do it all, and so
I've been taking a break from festival films to watch the terrible movies that you saw at the theater,
like Meg.
like Meg, like
Ah,
Jupiter Ascending,
you know,
like Rampage.
I didn't think Rampage was horrible.
It has, well, I haven't finished watching it.
Oh, okay. Rampage isn't horrible. Rampage has a number of moments, fun moments and such in there, especially if you played the game at all. There's a couple of little nods to it, which are cool. So it does have that. Though I will say that it's not great. And the guy who plays Negan on Walking Dead is in
Yes, I
Rampage.
did.
But the problem is he delivers his line. He must still have been in Negan mode, because he's been doing the TV show, because he pretty much was just a good guy Negan. The way he delivered his lines and everything, it was like, really?
I see that. The funny thing is, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I started, he was the dad on Supernatural.
Right.
So watching him now in this, you're right, he delivers a lot of what he delivers in this, at least what I saw of it so far, was very much like Negan.
I when I was watching,
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you can't, you're not shaking it, man. Like you may have wanted to take a little bit of a break before you took another role, because yeah, he was truly delivering the lines like that. So
Yeah.
but
And who knows, maybe his direction was to do that.
it might have been, who knows, with the direction. I'm a sucker for The Rock. I fully admit it. Maybe a little bit of man crush. I don't know, but the guy's very charismatic, and I
He
dig.
is. He's
He's
all full of charisma.
he's just fun to watch on screen, regardless of how horrible the script or whatever the movie is. He's fun to watch on screen. He almost made Doom tolerable. So so you do have
Yes.
that, but
No, see, I enjoyed Doom for Carl Urban.
well, okay, Carl Urban and The Rock. I forgot Carl Urban was in it. So yeah, I'll watch Carl Urban too in anything. I liked him in Dread. I thought he was great in Dread.
Yeah.
It's not a role I would have ever pictured him in.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have pictured him as Bones McCoy either, but he did a fantastic job of that.
He did. Oh, that's the thing, is he was wonderful in it. It just was not the first pick I would have had for Dredd, though neither would have been "I am the law," Mr. Sylvester Stallone, where he just couldn't figure out where to put the emphasis. I am the law. I am the law. I am the law. I am the law. There we go. He only had 4 words, and
Yeah, well, it wasn't I am Groot, but he did communicate a lot with those 4 words.
That's true. He did communicated that was a bad movie, but a fun bad movie, but still not great by any means.
Yeah.
Max von Sydow looked like he woke up and he's like, why am I in this movie? Who put me here? Okay,
money.
Yes, money.
Lots and lots of money.
Oh yeah. I mean, they always say, you talk to almost any actor in Hollywood, even the big names, and they say, you don't exactly turn down work ever if you can help it. If it doesn't conflict. I mean, Sam Jackson is classic example of that. Here you got a big name. Well, even The Rock, but especially Sam Jackson, he does anything from some huge super blockbuster to a direct-to-video fodder where he's collecting the cha-ching. So,
yep.
Yes. So, yeah, we'll get started here then. Yeah. And welcome my VIP. Oh, this isn't a VIP. This is a regular. I'm jumping ahead. I have so many projects going on. I don't even know where I'm at, Dawn. I'm
overachiever.
I am an overachiever. Let's start this again. Hello, my friends. Yes, here we are once again in the spoiler room. I have the lovely and talented diva of the spoiler room, Dawn, who is with us tonight. Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I am doing very well. Did some Pokemoning. I got some shaved iced coffee from the Tech Lounge in downtown Stevens Point. Shameless plug there because the place is great. And go visit if you are in Stevens Point. Check out Tech Lounge. Yes, great coffee. And you can play some video games too there. But tonight, we aren't talking about video games. We're talking more big monsters. We talked about Godzilla, and we were also talking last week about a big monster as well in the Cloverfield. And now today, well, we've got The Host. Yes, Korea came up with their own monster film. And Dawn, did you want to give the synopsis of The Host, or would you want me to?
I was thinking about this, and I was trying to decide how best to synopsize this.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that there's, aside from, I don't know. There's a lot going on, but not all of it is relevant.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a densely packed film, while at the same time, not everything there pertains to the main plot, which basically the main plot is due to pollution in a river in Seoul, Korea, in the Han River. Because of all this pollution, suddenly a creature has formed over the span of like 10 years, I think it is, or
yeah, something like that.
Like 10 years, this creature has grown and is now wreaking havoc in Seoul, Korea. And we follow a family who is impacted by the attack of this creature when he or she or it, whatever you want to call this creature, ends up taking one of their family members, the young daughter of the family, and they think she might still be alive thanks to a phone call from her, but they have to find out where she is before the monster decides that, yep, I'm short on food, and she's looking like the main course. So that's the story. We follow this family through Seoul, Korea, as they look for their daughter who's kidnapped by a big monster. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on.
But then there's so much more, but that's not integral to that main plot.
There is so much more. There's stuff about family and uh
And like the original Godzilla movie, it's also kind of an eco disaster film.
it's eco disaster film. They even have a few statements here about the government in it. It definitely has elements of early Godzilla films. Having again, I apologize to everyone for bringing it up, but it was a major part of my life for a month. Having watched them, I could really see the influences in here. This is like Korea trying to make their own Godzilla film. In a way, would you say that's maybe not saying be exactly like Godzilla, but still very similar in many aspects?
On a smaller scale, and yes, definitely.
Yeah, the monster is definitely on a smaller scale, which is actually kind of cool to see because usually when you get a monster film like this, it gets bigger and bigger as the movie goes along, due to some growth thing or whatnot. But in this case, no, it's just this really cool mutant creature.
It really is.
I
Every
oh I
time I love looking at this creature because every time I try to look and make my brain understand what it looks like, I notice something different about it.
Yeah, like this time I noticed it actually has like a beak, like a bird beak almost. And it's got multiple tails and arms, and this thing is really. I give their creature design mad props for coming up with a very original beastie. Because again, you don't run into that quite so often with a lot of these monster films. Usually they try to have something familiar, at least a little bit, it seems like, in it. And this one, there isn't. I mean, you think you might have it figured out, but then you see something else, you're like, oh no, wait.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got this really nifty prehensile tail that it uses like a hand, but then it has half a dozen or more what look like fish tails that I at first thought were just little dangly arms, but they're fish tails.
Mm-hmm.
Its mouth is very beak-like, but it's also kind of whale-like with the soft, almost some of the uh, features of the mouth almost reminded me of the fins or whatever that come
Oh
down
yeah.
around the creature from Black Lagoon, his mouth.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I
It's very
mean,
similar to that. Well, and it's sectional too, almost like Predator. It,
yep,
it it's
it opens up
mm-hmm.
like a flower.
Yeah, it's got a
It's
wicked tongue. I mean, this thing's got so much going on with it.
it's a great design that your brain has a hard time wrapping around. It's really fantastic, and they don't skimp on showing it either, which is awesome.
No, for 2006, the CGI for this creature, I will say, watching it again for the show, holds up fairly well. I mean, there's a few
Yeah,
scenes, of course, but overall, I'm like, holy crap, this actually is really good for 2006. Especially for Korean film, which they don't have a huge budget that they can usually put into these films. So, yeah, it blew me away how well it still stood up. And also, what I find interesting about this creature, and I noticed even more this time around than the first time I watched it, was it's klutzy. Did you notice that?
yes, I did throughout the whole. Well, it's. I'm not sure that it's supposed to be an on land kind of creature. It's supposed to be. I was trying to think of it like maybe like a salamander or a
Like a lungfish?
yeah, or a tadpole.
Tadpole, yeah. It's definitely amphibious, so we know
Yeah.
that much. And it really is a little more comfortable in the water than it is on land. Though I also dig the fact that we really where films could have, and it really probably would have showed its age, shown underwater shots. We never go underwater with this thing,
No, we don't.
which kind of surprised me in a good way because it does dive underwater. I mean, you see its shadow, but
Mm-hmm.
because in the opening, we get kind of what we figure has caused this in that here a U.S. military base. Yes, folks, Westerners. The one guy who Walking Dead folks may recognize, because I think
Scott Wilson.
Scott Wilson is in here, I do believe, playing this guy who it tells his helper, basically his assistant, pour all this formaldehyde down the drain because the bottles are dusty.
That's apparently. So here's the thing. That's apparently a real thing that happened.
Is it
He's
really?
a mortician. Yep. He they poured a bunch of formaldehyde into the Han River. That was a real thing that happened that inspired this movie.
No kidding. I
Yep.
did not realize that.
I was watching the commentary.
Okay, sure.
I didn't watch the whole commentary. I got too absorbed in the movie.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it tends to happen. Yeah, well, that's even makes it even cooler then because yeah, they pour a huge amount of formaldehyde down the tubes in the late 90s. And then we kind of follow as this creature is slowly noticed just subtly over the years until it's finally grown into this kind of massive creature. And so it's interesting how we opened the movie like that because we get this kind of jumping ahead in timeline to we get the guy who's gonna kill himself. And I know, folks, it sounds bad. I'm laughing, but he's like, "Hey, there's something in the water," and you see the big shadow of the creature underneath, and I'm just like, "Okay, so it's this type of film." Because Dawn, did it surprise you that this is really at least for the most part, a dark comedy in many aspects?
It did surprise me a little bit.
Mhm.
It did surprise me, especially because it did start out so dark.
Yeah, I mean, the tonally, some people might complain tonally, this film is all over the board.
Yeah. Although as soon as they introduce Gang Du, the main character,
Yes.
the humor is
Yeah, the humor is, but different time. It was the early noughties. Plus, we are looking at a different culture, which, if you watch a few other films as well, you can see where the humor definitely is different in other cultures than it is, in from maybe what you're used to seeing. And not only that, we're talking 13 years later when things have really changed in our culture. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, he's a sympathetic character. He is rather simple, and one of the interesting things I see is his family runs this food stand, and how we find out about the relationship of all these family members, I thought was really interesting because we're not given everybody's role right away. I mean, did that throw you off, Dawn, or did you kind of like how we kind of discover in the first act here as it kind of goes along? Wait, no, that's not an uncle. That's the dad of the girl, but they're not exactly talking to each other like dad and daughter. I mean, how'd you think they handled this with the introduction of all these different family members?
I liked it because
Mhm.
it was a very you learn things as they went, and the dynamic you get the dynamic between the characters and then the explanation rather than and I kind of like that because it's a like you said a very non-traditional
Approach. Yeah.
approach to it. But you could, I mean, you
You can
knew that it was the dad right away because when you know, the introduction to the scene is Gangdu is asleep, and then Gangdu is asleep, and then he hears somebody yell "Dad," and he wakes up and he calls out her name, realizes it's not her, and goes right back to sleep.
Right.
I mean, so you can tell that she is the number one thing on his mind, but you can also tell through all the interaction that he has issues.
He has challenges, yes.
Yeah.
He definitely has some challenges. And but some people may take a little bit how they approach this character, but he's sympathetic, and actually, as the film goes along, he ends up becoming a hero of the film. So, in that respect, it's a good thing, for all
Well,
the crap he goes through.
and I like that, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit,
No, go
but
ahead.
I do like that they actually take the time to explain why he is the way he is.
Yes. Yes, they talk about that and address that so that that this isn't he's not just this way. There is a reason for
Yeah.
why he is.
Yeah, because his younger siblings have nothing but disregard and contempt for him,
Yeah.
without understanding that he gave up so much and was effectively brain damaged from malnutrition in order to take care of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, you're watching this horror monster film, and in the middle of it you get kind of this element with these characters. I mean, to
Yeah,
try to
social commentary. Yep.
you get social commentary not only about Seoul's government, because we find out that the brother and his friend went to university, but they were protesters as well.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the aunt of the girl who was kidnapped. She's a professional archery. She's she doesn't get a huge medals because she has some slight hangups, but she competes professionally in archery. You've got the dad, the elderly dad who's running the food stand. It's just there's so much just with this family. And we get it presented all enough as the film plays out, so you understand these characters. We don't get too deep, but I don't think you need to with the
No.
family, because you could tell that regardless of all their insults and such, you still have that family unit going on. They all still want to save the little girl. What's it?
Hanseo.
Hanseo. Thank you. I've been trying to figure. I'm like, I forgot it, and I was trying to pull it up. Thank you. Hanseo is the little girl. And yeah, meanwhile, we get cutscenes because as we go along, we see how the city's dealing with the fact that this monster attacked, because they make it's not like a subtle, like the monster grabs one person and then another and then finally comes out. I mean, in this first act, we see the monster in its full glory, full on attacking people on the riverfront.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not hiding itself at all.
And even in this introductory scene, with everything else that's going on, you get a bit of the person that Gangdu actually is, because he's right in there going head to head with the monster. He actually draws first blood.
Yeah, he does draw first blood. He goes, there's a scene, the monster's wreaking havoc across the riverfront, and Gangdo is trying to rescue his daughter and try to get away from the creature. And we see the creature actually attacking more of the people on the river. And there's an American there who ends up saying, all right, he's going to fight it. He's going to take on the creature. And Gandu pulls up right next to him and goes, all right, let's do this. And these two take on the creature And this is the first act, folks. They're taking on the creature, and yeah, Gandu actually grabs this street sign with a concrete, the concrete stopper on the bottom, and smashes the tail of the creature.
Yep.
Now granted, the creature gets a little payback because it ends up swallowing his daughter, which we find out later. It then regurgitates its food for later, and she happened to survive the ordeal. In which case, her perspective, we mostly get told from the pit where all these bodies are being dropped. But yeah, Gandu tells you what type of guy he is. I mean, throughout, he's a guy willing to make sacrifices, because later on he makes another sacrifice because the military thinks, or is giving out the story, which we find later is fake news, that there's an infection going on from contact with the creature, which we later find out, no, there isn't. And Gandu and his family are considered infected, and they're going to go look for their daughter. And Gandu actually sacrifices himself because their dad ends up getting killed by the creature. And he sacrifices himself to let his siblings escape, basically.
So, speaking of social commentary, I thought that was an interesting dynamic, that even though it's the South Korean government and military that's somewhat in charge, it was actually the U.S. military and the U.S. CDC making all these decisions. And it's a virus. We're telling you it's a virus, and then wait, no, the big secret reveal is there's really not a virus. There's no evidence of a virus. We think that we want there to be a virus. That's why we keep doing autopsies and experiments on people who've come into contact, but we've really found no evidence of a virus. And then there's this Agent Yellow, which destroys all biological
material.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, is this just supposed to be the U.S.'s the U.S. and South Korean government are doing chemical warfare trials because they can?
They're using
that was pretty heavy.
Yeah, they're using the creature as an experiment for their weapons, which I picked up on. You're right. You got the other commentary where they're wanting to be a disease, because if there's a disease, they can keep control on these people and they can come up with an excuse to try out their Agent Yellow. And yeah, so we've got this context in line in this film that's about a giant monster. I mean,
which, with all of this going on, and then when this the guy, what's his name? The actor he was in, I'm gonna look this up. The actor that he played in a bunch of movies, but I'm specifically thinking Silence of the Lambs. The guy in the white hazmat suit or biohazard suit.
Yeah.
What's his name? Paul Lazar.
Yes.
When he comes in and they're talking to Gandu, they're like, why didn't you contact the authorities, the military, the government? Why didn't you contact the media? I mean, it was harder for them to go black off the grid looking for Hanseo, but it would have been so much easier to get help to get her.
Right. And in fact, you've got his character who's sitting there and going, why didn't you try the military? And you translator who's sitting there kind of putting words in Gandu's mouth because I didn't get fucking help from anyone. And he's like, no, don't. That's not what I was saying. But he gives all this and you think, oh, maybe someone's actually going to believe him. But nope, the US doctor goes, oh yeah, he's completely delusional. We basically got to lobotomize him.
Which backfired.
Which backfired because what they ended up doing was kind of waking up Gondo a little bit, and he gets to kick some ass in the laboratory.
Mhm.
And it's great to see. This guy's just driven to find his daughter, and it's you're not quite sure. That's what I love about this movie is 1 minute you're sitting there sympathizing with him and it's got some heart and you're like, oh man, and next minute it's got action going on. Next minute we've got the creature barfing up bones. We get a little girl who's actually being badass, surviving in this pit, hiding from this creature. You get this family who's in disarray. I mean, this thing just does not just go from A to B to C. It covers a wide gambit of things
Mhm.
in it. So it is literally a roller coaster ride of tone to where you're laughing 1 minute, you're on the edge of your seat, you're sitting there going, oh my God. And then you're just like, wait, did they just say that? And then you're like, oh man, that's heavy commentary. I mean,
Yep.
it's
And yet, it's not, I mean, there's a lot of commentary and there's a lot of things going on, and yet it's not a horribly deep movie, all
no,
things considered.
no, it's not like these things are deeply explored, but they are brought up. They're there in fine spirit of Godzilla films, which
Mhm.
have done the exact same approach many times, whether it's the eco storyline of pollution, whether it's commentary on the government. You get a whole hell of a lot that in Shin Godzilla. Holy crap about
Mhm.
bureaucracy. While they never go too deep into it, you still get the commentary. You know what the filmmaker's trying to say and what the writer's
Mhm.
trying to say. And the performance by everybody's great as well. Especially we've got to give props, serious props to the young woman who plays Han Xiao, though, because wow,
Yeah,
she
she
is.
did great.
I mean, she from when she gets swallowed to the creature, she's in that pit, and she's so cool. It's almost like you're like, I just want to watch her.
Well, and not just that, a lot of that working with she's gotta be working with the green screen and that monster. That's gotta be hard.
Yeah, especially for a young actress, that's
Yeah.
got to be hard to be working like that. Um, and again, you do get humor in here. You get actually the family who they think their daughter initially
God.
was eaten by the monster. And
Oh,
so
the
we finally
funeral
get
scene.
we get all the family together. We get the alcoholic uncle who was a college grad. We get the lack of confidence professional archery person. We get granddad who runs the food stand, and we've got a Gangdo who is has some mental challenges, and they're all mourning, which they got this memorial up really dang quick, of the people who were killed by the creature. And this family, out of everybody else, goes so overboard in their expressing their grief to where at first you're like, oh, you're feeling bad. And all of a sudden you start to chuckle a little and they get a little bit more ridiculous. And pretty
A
soon you're
and
like,
actually, the rest of the mourners, for what we are used to being somber
yeah,
at a funeral like this, I noticed that a lot of the mourners were very, what we would consider over the top, wailing, keening, but what they did was nigh
what,
comical.
what the Park family does is yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I mean, like, serious, like rolling on the ground, yelling, knocking things over. Just so emotional. This family is to the point where the director does a fantastic job of first getting you in the moment and feeling bad because you think maybe the girl is dead, and you're like, oh man, and then they're throwing each other. Oh wow, they finally got the family together, and then by the end of it, you're laughing because they're spinning on the ground, and they need to be like pried away from one another, and by the end of it, you're smiling, and you're like, wait, this was supposed to be a somber scene, but you get a few other scenes like that in here, with this, and yeah, the storyline is interesting because we're introduced to this thieves characters in the second act, and one of them, and they end up meeting the monster, and one of them ends up surviving in the pit. And what'd you think of that dynamic where suddenly this little boy who isn't too much younger than Hyun Seo, but she suddenly becomes the protector and mom type? I mean, this was an interesting dynamic between these two.
So the little boy, Siju, yeah, that was unexpected and nice, and also made me wonder because it was all all the people who had died were all bigger,
Right.
fully grown adults, and then the two children are the ones that survived, which said something too about how the creature, about their younger kids having, I don't know, being smaller, not as affected by the creature or something.
Well, I kind of took it as the creature excuse me. I took it as the creature was kind of mutated, and it's almost like they were too small for its mouth. Like it couldn't completely crush them, because we saw it earlier too with her arm hanging out.
Yeah.
It's like it can't, where an adult dies because it gets crushed because they're big enough to fit in the mouth, but the kids seem to survive because it can't fully crush them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which, it's not laid out, folks. We don't, thank God, we don't get heavy exposition on the monster completely and a full detail that, no, you piece these things together as you watch the monster behave. Like, how it at one point has to purge itself of all the humans it's eaten earlier.
All the bones. It regurgitates the bones like an owl regurgitates its pellets, except far more juicy.
Far more juicy and a lot more of it.
Yeah.
That
what came out of that was way bigger than that creature could have held in its body.
Well, yeah. Again, it's yet another scene though where you go from kind of scary, kind of horror. Okay, because you get the first few you first get the skull out, and you're like, okay, that's kind of creepy. The girl's creeped out, and then it spits out some more. You're like, okay, and then it just is a stream of bones coming out. That you're right. There's no way that thing had all of that in its gullet.
Yeah.
So by the end of it, you find yourself smiling because it's a bit ridiculous, but that's not how you started out in the scene. And there's so many moments like that in this film. It
was probably their way of, how sometimes in American films, in order to keep it an R rating instead of an X rating, they have to change the color of the blood to black or green or whatever, like Evil Dead or Kill Bill. And so they change it just enough so that it's not too disturbing. I wonder if it was a situation like that where they realized how incredibly frightening just that one skull, or even just a few skeleton bits would,
right.
Skeleton bits would be, that they had to push it over the top so it broke that tension to the point of humor, just to keep it from being X-rated.
And I could definitely see that, because again, it's not the first time that we have this happen in this film. Throughout the film, it's peppered with scenes like this that start off serious or rather dark, and by the end of them, you're kind of smiling and chuckling a little because you're just like, "Oh, okay." And maybe that is it because of the ratings, or so that they could get this film into more theaters and not have the darker rating. Though it's got a third act that goes dark when we get
Mhm.
involved with their final solution, the U.S. and Korean uh, solution. Though it's mostly U.S., which again we have those influences from Godzilla, where we have foreign powers deciding what should be done about the problem in the country rather than the people who live in the country getting a chance to say what's going on in their country.
Yep.
Because Godzilla, we had that where you, especially, it was always big with the U.S. and Russia, or the UN deciding, hey, we should use nukes to take out Godzilla, and Japan's like, we live here. And they're like, no,
Yep.
no, 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 no. And it's kind of the same way here. The US CDC and the US government and the Seoul government are deciding things, while the civilians are like, no.
Yep. Yep. Um, but yeah, I got distracted from the little boy. The little boy was great. Was a
Mhm.
great addition. And the dynamic between the two was great. Um, and it just brought out more what a good actress that young lady was.
Yeah, I mean, they were some really strong moments. She doesn't get a huge amount of screen time, but makes the most of it. And the scenes that she does do with the young boy, C Joe, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because C Jin was his brother who did not make it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and C Joe, yeah, it was very touching, and you get this kind of a very warm moment in this pit of death that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, these kids are not just sitting around waiting for someone to save them. They come up with a way to try to escape
Yep.
by taking clothes from the dead people. Yes, these kids have no qualms about taking the clothes off the dead people to make a rope, and then tie it to a police baton, because one of the cops got eaten and regurgitated down there, and use it as a grappling hook and try to get up it. I'm like, holy crap, these kids are resourceful.
Yep.
Which is refreshing. Unfortunately, it endears you so much to Hyun Seo. It just brings more emotional impact to the ending.
Yeah.
Because as much as you have horror elements and comedy, you've got, the brother, the uncle, I should say, he's the one that tracks down where she might actually be, thanks to his cell phone buddy, who then has the whole office turn on him for reward money. You've got him, you've got the archery aunt, and you got, Gang Do. All these three, they separate and they come together in the third act just in time for the Agent Yellow
To be released. Yep.
to be released. And suddenly, this film, which has some serious moments, but for the most part has been kind of a tongue in cheek bit of monster film with some dramatic moments and commentary, it goes completely serious and dark. And you're just like,
But just before we get to that point, did you notice
hmm,
that I don't know, I don't want to call it a riot, but that's what the police are in, is riot gear. The demonstrators were at the location by the Han River where they're
yeah,
going to release. They're all wearing free, um,
Gang Do.
free Park Gang-do shirts. So while all this other stuff is going on, apparently the media has gotten hold of, or somehow the public has gotten hold of what's going on with the Park family.
Right. Somehow, and it's alluded to a bit because when the grandpa and Gangdo are captured by the cops, they are on their posters. The posters of their wanted posters are actually updated with little stamps that say dead and captured.
Uh-huh.
But being captured, they suddenly get this cult following, which the film is told from the perspective of one of the family members. We never leave one of these family members. We're either always with Gang Do or Haibong or Name Il or Nam Jo. We're always with one of these characters. So as far as our perspective of what's going on in the outside world, we only get bits and pieces. And you're right. Suddenly you realize there's this whole movement that's pulling for the Park family and specifically Gang Do. And you're like, okay, where'd this come from? Because they only give you little hints on it because the director and the story wants you to stay with this family because that at its core is who you're supposed to sympathize with and
Uh-huh.
and stick with. These are the characters you're supposed to really like, and it's heartbreaking when they die.
Yeah, it is. My God. So
Oh,
before we get to what happens with Hanseo,
yes.
what was your opinion of what was your thoughts on when Nam was it no Haibong, that was the dad.
Yeah.
Um what was your thoughts on how he met his end?
It was surprising because it was a bit anticlimactic. He
Yeah.
basically just gets run over by the creature. His head hits the front of the creature and he
Well,
lands.
not just that, he wasn't counting his ammunition.
Oh,
So
yes.
he he clicked on empty.
He clicked on empty as well. Yeah.
Wow.
He clicks on empty and then the creature just bowls over him
Mm-hmm.
and he dies from the head injury. Which you've been with this character who's rather, you like him quite a bit, and then this happens. You're just like, oh, he's actually dead. He's not getting up. He's,
Yeah.
you kind of wait for that movie moment, going, okay, we followed this guy for a long, we've been following this character along since the first few minutes. He's gonna get up. He's gonna. He's not getting up.
Definitely not.
He's definitely not getting up. This is not. Oh, he's actually dead. Well, and that's the one thing that I kind of like about foreign cinema approach, and we do get it occasionally in the U.S. cinema, but it really comes out, I think, a little bit more in foreign cinema, especially Asian cinema. Is you get main characters that have been set up and you stuck with for a while, and they will just kill them.
Oh yes, they will.
You you get main characters that they endear you just enough so you don't want something bad to happen to them, and you're thinking kind of Hollywood style, oh, these guys are going to make it to the end, and no, they don't. uh and not at all. And you're just like,
No.
oh, that type of movie, okay. you um yeah, and you feel for the Park family and the shit that they end up going through. And especially at the end when we get involved in the, speaking of characters who end up dying,
Uh-huh.
we get the Agent Yellow, and the monster ends up being at ground zero of Agent Yellow. uh so does the Park family, who's left.
Uh-huh.
And then we get a good chunk of movie where it's pulling at your heartstrings and you're just like, well, this got dark real quick.
Yeah.
um yeah, what'd you think about this ending when they drop Agent Yellow on the whole Park family? I mean, after they've pulled her from the mouth of the beast.
So I didn't understand a lot of what was going on there because you have some people who were reacting very strongly to it. They're bleeding from the nose, they're bleeding from the ears, and they're unable to function. But then the Park family is just in this, and they're just going to town. They're doing their thing. This one with Molotov cocktails, that one with the bow, and the third one with whatever they can find to stab this creature with. That is after the creature vomits or is incapacitated enough so that Gangdu can stick his head in its mouth, find that Hanseo was actually holding on to a tooth so she wouldn't be swallowed all the way, and pulls her back out.
Yeah, and we find
Clever
out
clever girl to the end. Clever girl.
She is a clever girl. She held on the tooth to the end so they didn't get swallowed, and by her holding the boy the way she did, she ended up sacrificing herself for the little boy.
Yes, she did.
Which, again, you kind of piece this together, folks. They don't lay out the way the creature works, but if you pay attention, that's what's going on. And in regards to what you mentioned, Dawn, it's not specified, but in all honesty, I think part of the reason why the Park family was able to at least somewhat resist the Agent Yellow um, side effects, because unfortunately, the brother and sister die as well. I think one of them's affected by it, isn't he? The brother, I think
a little bit, yeah.
He's affected a little bit more by it. But in all honesty, I got that all the while everybody thought they were infected and affected by the creature. And maybe they were, but not in the way we thought. Maybe they were affected by the creature in a way of it made them a little more resistance to the Agent Yellow, because the creature gets back up from the Agent Yellow after it's dumped on him a couple of times. And the Park family have been the ones who've been in closest contact with the creature the longest. So maybe that's what they were going for. Yes, they are infected, but in a different way.
Possibly given an immunity to it.
Right, given an immunity, or at least reducing the effects of the Agent Yellow, depending on how long they've been with the creature. Because out of them, Gangdo and Han Seo would have probably lived had she not been eaten. She probably would have lived.
Probably.
I would, most likely.
Just like the little boy lived.
Right. Whereas the brother and sister had kind of the least exposure to the creature, and so they were affected more by the Agent Yellow. And again, I'm talking out of my ass. I don't know.
They don't explain it. That's the whole point, is we're supposed to speculate.
Right. They do not give you any explanation. You don't get any epilogue of a news reporter, something, with Gangdo saying, oh, he was resistant to Agent Yellow. What you get none of that.
You get a tiny bit of epilogue, but only to the point, hopping to that very last scene there, only to the point where the news on the television that they're trying hard not to watch is saying, and the government has admitted that there was actually no virus at all. And then they turn off the TV and enjoy their dinner.
Yes. And Gangdo and Seju, the last two surviving members who are at a food stand, they're the only ones on the shore of the river. It's winter.
And so here's a thing that I noticed that I liked. That's a visible indicator of the evolution of Gangdo's character throughout the whole thing. So at the beginning, he's obviously this unkempt, clumsy, lazy, slobbish fellow with the only thing he gives a crap about is his daughter. Everybody else, it's hedonism. By the end of the movie, he's still got the food stand. They're the only food stand holding out there in the park there.
Yep.
And he's clean, he's well dressed, he's organized, he's cooking food, for this little boy. His hair is cut. It's not that half slobby, grown out dye job that it was throughout the rest of the movie. He's actually, whatever happened to him throughout this whole thing has affected him so that he actually cares more about.
Stuff in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost as if the very slight lobotomy that they gave him actually reversed, as you mentioned earlier, kind of reversed what had happened to him due to the malnutrition thing.
Yeah,
It,
I'm pretty sure that lobotomies don't work that way, but I'm willing to suspend my disbelief for this.
in this film, it kind of is a turnaround of it, and we end up, at the end, seeing the person who Gang Do really would have turned out to be, and it was probably inside all along.
Mhm.
And it took him shoving a spear through the mouth of a gigantic mutant creature that has killed his family to do it. But
Yep.
I loved that scene. I loved that because we've got the brother who is reliving his protest days by throwing Molotovs at the creature, who he got help from a homeless man who poured gasoline on the creature, who does not seem to be affected by the Agent Yellow, and he lights up the creature.
Mhm.
And it doesn't end well for him, but the creature's on fire and it's looking towards the water, and it's great. It's another part of the great direction of this film, in that what the creature is thinking, but we don't get someone saying it's gonna run to the water to douse itself or whatnot.
Mhm.
It's We get the perspective of the creature, and as it's running towards the water, Gangdo shows up with what happens to be this very similar, if not the same, because this is all in the similar area, but if not the same, very similar steel rod to what he had at the beginning of the film.
Mhm.
Only this time he was smart enough to smash the concrete off of it and use it as a full-on spear. And driven by the grief of the loss of his daughter, he just stabs this thing cold-blooded, keeping it from going into the river. And it's an awesome scene.
Honestly, watching how that scene played out, I half expected, the first time I saw this, I half expected it to be that he used his own body to kind of butt the spear up against. So I was expecting him to be impaled by that. And that didn't happen.
I think we're supposed to, because I had the exact same thought. You are not the only one. I'm like, because it had been a while since I watched this film, actually, since it first came out. And so they're panning down the rod after he basically immobilizes the creature by shoving it through its mouth into its brain pan. And the way it's directed and the coloring and everything, you're thinking, oh crap, did he have that up against his body and has it skewered him? But no, it didn't. He just had his palm of his hand against it.
Yep.
Which shows you kind of the strength he has gained. It's really an interesting character arc that they take with Gang Do with this film. And by the end, yes, you feel bad that his family has all passed on, especially the Hein Seo character, but she did the ultimate sacrifice. And yeah, in the end, you get this kind of quiet ending to where you're like, well, I didn't expect kind of it to go that route, in a good way though. I mean, film has a lot going on in it. And when I first watched it, I was very impressed, because on the surface you're like, and you look at the cover, you're like, oh, the Host, oh, another monster film. And then you get into it, and Dawn, this is a dense film.
It is. It is. I liked it. I mean, I saw it first when it was on Netflix, and then I went out and bought it because I liked it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
one thing that kills me, I don't understand why it's called The Host.
You know, I'm not sure either.
I mean, I'm sure there's a reason. There must be a reason. But
I'm wondering if it's just it's a reference that we don't and this is just saying difference in culture, Westerners we aren't quite getting
or it's a poor translation of the actual title.
right, or it is actually a poor translation of the actual title. Because yes, especially you and I, having watched many an indie film on a festival circuit,
Mhm.
suddenly that film gets retitled before it's released, and you look at it going, "Where the hell did they come up with
Yep.
that title?"
Yep.
It's like, really, that is what you decided to call it? It's yeah.
Oh
So
man.
on the whole, yeah, I think this film is impressive. If you're a monster fan, don't you're going to be kind of used to subtitles because you've watched other monster films. So but yeah,
Okay,
it.
so here's the thing I'm going to admit about this movie.
Go ahead.
And I prefer subtitles. I don't
Mhm.
mind this movie with dub.
Oh, really? I haven't watched the dubbed. I've only watched the subtitled version ever.
Yeah,
Um,
I watched it with the dub. I don't mind it with the English dub.
so they got decent voice actors then for it. You're saying
Decent enough.
enough, yeah.
Yeah, decent enough. I mean, it's uh, 9 times out of 10, if it's an English dub, I will turn off the English dub and watch and just do the subtitles. This is
Right.
one of those rare exceptions where I don't actually mind the English dub.
Huh. Wow. I might have to check that out. Yeah, I usually always try the subtitle version. So, but let's put it this way: there's, I believe, another Korean film that came out called Dragon Wars. That film, don't watch. Watch this one.
I haven't watched it. I'll avoid it.
I heard things about Dragon Wars, and then I watched it, and I gave a poor review. I just couldn't quite get into it. I'm like, my brain should be enjoying this, but I just can't. It's the one where I got someone commenting that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about with films or history because Korea absolutely had rockets back in such and such a time period. And
Really?
I need to do my historical studies because that is historical fact. And I look back at my review and I go, I wasn't saying that Korea didn't have rockets. I was saying that they weren't riding the backs of baby dragons uh, who were
Yeah.
launching rockets from them like you see in Transformers. You know,
Yeah.
like that's what I was saying. I
There's
was, yeah.
yeah.
So
I'm fairly certain they didn't have Transformers either.
no, they didn't. But yeah,
Robots in disguise.
yes, Dragon Wars, D Wars. I I don't really watch that one. Watch The Host though, folks. If you like just a solid, fun, interesting, different monster film, this is totally it. I
Yes.
mean, apparently Weta designed the creature.
I love the design of this creature. I love watching it, how they had it. So it very fluidly, it kind of, when we're introduced to the creature, it's hanging like a teardrop from the bottom of the bridge. And that just right there tells you how fluid the creature moves, except when it's on land.
Well, and then it's prehensile tail too. We see a number of different times where it's living in the sewers and it hangs out from under this bridge, and that's where it hangs out a lot. And it gets around under the bridge not by using its arms at all. Well, it uses its hands, but it like swings itself,
Mm-hmm.
like a pendulum underneath the bridge, and that's how it gets around. And I thought that was so cool. Like,
Yep.
It's like this is a monster where you just watch it and you learn more about it. It just makes it even cooler.
Yep.
Um, Even though it's the bad guy, it's still an awesome, one of the probably most original modern monster designs I've seen
Yep.
in quite some time. And it's really refreshing. And yeah, this is a film that it does its thing. And don't expect to be able to follow, you can follow the story, but think you expect how this film is going to go tonally, how it's going to play out with plot wise. You just roll with it because it's so interesting and unique, and it's great to see filmmakers out there still trying something different with the monster genre. Don't get me wrong, I love my big kaiju. Don't get me wrong, love it. I love my big beasties dearly, but it is also fun to see people just take risks and have it work out. And the host, I think that's what this film is. What about you, Don? Your final thought with the host? Would you say it was a monster film that kind of took a risk and just went for it?
Oh, absolutely. I agree. People should see this movie.
Yeah,
English dub, subtitles, however you want to watch it. It's worth watching. The risk paid off.
yeah, it did, and it we are getting a few American filmmakers who are taking risks now with the horror films, but let's face it, folks, especially if you're a horror fan, there's a whole lot of safe, as Derek would call it, baby horror out there. Um, Safe, predictable, formulaic, um, not ready to take chances, or if they do take chances, they're too busy going, look at how we're taking a chance.
Yep.
They're out there going, look at we're extreme. Oh,
Yep.
um, it's great to see that there are some filmmakers out there that are just telling a story and taking an original approach. And yeah, so you can tell, folks, we love this movie. I love this movie. I don't watch it enough, but every time I do watch it, it's such an enjoyable watch. So yeah, and I hope you folks find it enjoyable too. And we're gonna wrap it up for the night here. So thank you, Dawn, for doing this and talking the host. It's been a lot of fun.
And
And
thank you for having me.
you're welcome. And I know you haven't written too much on it for quite some time, but you still have some great review stuff out there. So, License to Shill, my friend, where can they find those written reviews at?
You can find things that I write at intheaudience.net.
That's right. Some great written stuff there, folks. You need to check it out. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it whet your appetite to go seek out and see the rest of the hosts that we haven't spoiled here in the spoiler room. And now I think we'll just say good night, Dawn.
Good night, Mark.